So I've got a little confession to make. Don't worry, I'm not going to be emitting anything Russell Brandy. That's for my lawyers to figure out. Basically, I had an unwritten rule that I wouldn't cover any TV shows in this series that I hadn't covered already in either this or the ZX Spectrum games based on TV show series that I finished after 4 years last year. You see, I didn't want to cover old ground like a rutting bull looking for a mate. And, well, looky here, it's the Addams Family. Now, if you've been with me for a while, I first covered the Addams Family in 2021 in the Halloween special, which started out with this scene. Why don't you watch that video while I carry on huffing Dalmatian piss? Oh, that's delicious! Don't worry, the pug will be back next week. But technically, you see, this isn't the same show. It's a remake. And there's a bit more of the story to tell about the Addams Family. But before we go any further, let me just lazily stick in 2021's facts that I made on the Addams Family video before we bring you up to speed with all this newfangled Addams Family show that isn't either as new or as fangled, what is fangled, as Wednesday on Netflix, nor as successful. Anyways, here's the Addams Family and what they're all about. The Addams Family originally emerged from their tomb as far back as 1938 in cartoons penned by their namesake Charles Addams, which were sporadically featured in a weekly periodical called The New Yorker. The Addams were depicted as a twisted version of the American dream, a wealthy family who take great joy in the spooky, with no idea that normal people find them horrendously scary. The original family from 1938 featured Father Gomez, Mother Morticia, children Wednesday and Pugsley, Uncle Fester, Butler Lurch and Grandmama, along with a character we haven't really seen since, Wednesday's pet octopus Aristotle, presumably because it was hard and expensive to feature an octopus in a 1960s television show. The living hand Thing came along in the 1950s, with the hairy cousin It following in the 1960s. The first TV show featuring this gothic crew debuted in 1964, a half-hour sitcom that ran for 64 episodes and introduced the famous theme tune. Bum. It was shown in the UK by numerous channels over the decades, originally ITV in the 60s, Channel 4 in the 80s, Sky 1 in the early 90s and BBC 2 in the mid-90s. You can still find it on some of the more obscure digital channels if you look hard enough. Go on, Nick, go on. There was a, I suppose, apropos 1972 Scooby-Doo crossover, which featured a lot of the original cast reprising their roles, but using their mouths and not their bodies. A cartoon series followed that was produced by Hanna-Barbera, and that followed in 1973 and featured none other than an 11-year-old Jodie Foster as the voice of Pugsley. Yes, Pugsley, not Wednesday. Hello there, Jodie. Did you enjoy that? I enjoyed it because it meant less work. Thanks 2021 Jay's Manchild. So what's this then? The new Addams Family series show that has given its Gameboy Color games such an unwieldy moniker. So the new Addams Family was a US-Canadian collaboration commissioned by Fox. It came out in 1998 and the UK viewers may remember it from CITV, where it was shown on the weekends. RIP CITV. It was produced by two companies, Shavik in Canada and the Saban Entertainment Company in the States. Yes, the Saban of Go-Go Power Rangers, You Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. No, I haven't covered them yet. Maybe they'll be soon. The show itself was a revival based on the success of the movie franchise at the turn of the decade. No one from those two movies appears, sadly, though we do get a holdover from the straight-to-VHS third movie, Addams Family, which was called Addams Family Reunion, and that is the actress that played Wednesday Addams, Nicole Fugere. The third movie wasn't incredibly well received given its new cast and its micro-budget, but Nicole impressed the TV production team enough to keep her role in the series. Tim Curry was good as Gomez because he's Tim Curry, obviously, and probably didn't want to do the TV series afterwards. The show took a lot of the original scripts from the black and white series and also introduced new storylines too. The second series of this even introduced a new character in Grandpapa Addams, who just so happened to be played by the original Gomez actor, John Astin, with the joke being that he and Gomez were very similar fellows indeed. The show evidently wasn't incredibly popular, finishing just a year after it premiered in 1999. Other Addams Family productions have appeared since, in the form of both The Excellent Wednesday from Netflix and 2 absolutely shambolic animated movie efforts. I watched the first one, really didn't want to bother with the second. The game based on this show appeared in 2002, 3 years after the series finished, but was still in regular circulation in the US, Europe and Canada as repeats. Indeed, publisher Microids only released this Gameboy Color title in Europe. Plans were made by Titus Interactive to put this out in the States, but US Game Boy Color players were denied time spent with 8-bit interpretations of their foremost gothic family of subversives, unfortunately. They would just have to go and play the Ocean efforts instead from the pre-color Game Boy. Sorry, America. Microids are a French publisher, and the reason I can use the word are is that they're still doing it. God bless them. They're releasing games based on Inspector Gadget, Smurfs and Asterix these days that will no doubt give me scope for content if I'm still doing this at the care home in 2060. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of the Italian programmer 7 Cents, as can be evidenced by their website now being owned by some mumbo-jumbo peddlers. 7 Cents' previous game, The Fish Files, has had its game engine hoiked out by Uncle Fester and co here. We've got a point-and-click adventure, although given the lack of mouse support for the Game Boy Color, it's more of a game in the mooch up and do stuff genre, I guess. The storyline has a property developer rock up to the Addams Family door telling Gomez that no deeds exist that indicate that the family should be there, so could they kindly GTFO as they want to build a fancy theme park there, thank you very much. The property developer gives them just 24 hours, which doesn't seem quite long enough to me. Give them a week, mate. They've got like a load of antique torture equipment, cauldrons and gargoyles to shift out. While the adults grimly panic, the 2 kids coolly take matters into their own pale hands. There follows a traipse around the manor and its grounds as first Pugsley and then Wednesday attempt to assemble the documentation required to tell that theme park baron to go forth and multiply. In the style of the very best Scum Engine games, Pugsley waddles his chunky behind around the mansion, fetching odds and ends for the family and combining items to solve puzzles. Because it's not incredibly intuitive when compared to the best proponents of the point-and-click genre, the new Addams Family series is initially pretty darn clunky in its item selection and interactions, but when you get the hang of it, it's not really a bar to solve the problems for these black-clad relatives. You'll be fingers and thumbs with this, trying to line up the Porky Boy with the items and other characters, but you'll soon get familiar with its idiosyncrasies after about 10 minutes or so. The manor is not the sprawling dwelling as featured in Ocean's platformers. It's fairly modestly sized for the main part, which means the majority of the items and characters that you will need should only be a handful of screens away, at least initially. It's not long before Pugsley, though, has to mosey out into the perilous garden full of violent fauna and bugs. Here is a bit of variety from the standard gameplay, as you have to dodge in between ghastly beasts in a mode that reminds me awfully of the more annoying aspects of One Boy and His Blob. It's not the best part of the game, unfortunately. You have to get the timing correct, which can be frustrating, and you have to go back and forth across these several times with different objects as you solve the problems within them. The good news is, once you've solved an area like this, you don't have to return here. The bad news is, as you may have guessed from what I was saying, there are several of these areas in a crypt and somewhere else I'm about to get to. Most of the puzzles aren't massively illogical, so anyone should be able to muddle through this game, no matter your understanding or indeed your experience of the genre. Wednesday's second half tropes will take you out of the grounds of the Addams Family Manor and into Halloween Town, which has some bad memories from me. It's because where families can be destroyed by lusty, mulleted pugs. Have a look at this. Well, hi there, Mary Sue.
Hey.
I hear you're headed off to England soon.
Yeah, what's it to you?
But I was kind of thinking I might miss you, you know. Look at this one there. But even with this out-of-house escapade, it's not a huge game at all. I can certainly see you having to return to your save game 2 or 3 times before you finish it, even if you're not using a video guide like this cheating scumboy did right here. Graphically, it's pretty charming, with dull greys, blues and blacks that are in keeping with the feel of the franchise. But it could literally look like any Addams Family series or movie. There's really nothing here that makes me think that it looks like anything from the late 90s version of the show at all. Worse still, there's no theme tune. There's a vague sound alike, very vague indeed, but this makes it feel very little in its approach to the license, despite the fact they've got the license. You're not controlling Thursday or French Bulldogsley here. It's not the Addams Family. Despite this, I think there's a certain charm to the interpretation, and though it struggles with the comedic aspects of the series, that's potentially because it's a Franco-Italian production, and it's not their first language, is it? So yes, it's not spooktacular, but it'll grab you by the ghoulies for a little bit. A competent small-scale adventure game on hardware it's not really suited for. I can't give you a review from the time, so let's see what Cousin It says instead. Next up, after the season of the witch, I've got some unfinished business with high-tech software as I look at Commodore 64's Oggy Doggy and Doggy Daddy. I don't know if that's an impression, I can't remember it. My boy, I've remembered it. Anyway, like, subscribe, and Kay, thanks, bye.